Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the RSL 2025 Revival StarCraft League Season 3 Playoffs Day number 2. We just wrapped up with our PvP with Zan versus Classic, and they once again have sort of he's going to be jumping on as a guest commentator for the Zerg matchups. I do appreciate it. He does have a lot of knowledge. He's very analytical as well, and he does add a lot to the overall broadcast. So I do appreciate that they do bring on. I will say that he is a little bit soft-spoken, and I do hope that they can bump up on the mic. I know that he's much lower when it comes to the other casters, so hopefully they can adjust that when it comes to their overall production side of things. But here we go, we're jumping into our best of 5. Vitas are done. Game 1 is going to be Magnetic North, followed by Maganatha, Winter Madness, Tokamak, and Celestial Enclave. Ooh, that's a lot of big maps, a lot of large maps. Aside from Game 1, I would say that Maganatha, Winter Madness, Tokamak, and Celestial Enclave are all massive maps in their own right. A lot of them are very defensive as well, especially the Center 3. So I'm curious to see how SHIN is going to approach Trigger. I would expect him to want to avoid some of these larger and more defensive maps, but we'll get there. Up first, we have Magnetic North. We do expect to see an all-in. Magnetic North all-ins are favored. I'm referring to 3-base all-ins. 3-base all-ins are very standard on Magnetic North, so we're leading towards SHIN embracing a more aggressive style on that map. We'll see if Trigger can survive that aggression. Trigger, I will say that he will excel in the mid game, in the mid to late game. I do think that he has a lot of potential on some of the other more defensive maps to build up to that point, but here on Magnetic North, things can get chaotic, and it's going to be up to Trigger to embrace that chaos as well. It's not going to be easy. Best of luck. Best of luck, man. Best of luck.
Whereas SHIN, we all know, he loves to get aggressive himself. The Hydraling Bane patch is a blessing for this guy because he wants to bring the fight to you any way he can. As game number 1 is loading in, we have Trigger, the blue Protoss, spawning here in the top right. SHIN, the red Zerg in the bottom left, to start this best of 5. Again, an elimination match in the lower bracket of RSL.
SHIN for Weber Gaming, Trigger for Basilisk was going to be settling in, and again, welcome one and all once again to Magnetic North. As I mentioned before, Magnetic North does have a very open 3rd base, has a very open 4th base, and has an open area in between the 3rd and natural. So we've seen a lot of German taxis, a lot of Ling Bane Hydra all-ins, a lot of Ling Hydra all-ins, a lot of lair tech play from the Zerg.
The game right now here for Protoss, and so it's no surprise that he really wants to lean heavily on that strength because you can get a lot of value. You know, MaxPax is another one of these Protoss players who you watch him play and you sometimes forget which year it is. It kind of looks like Hero back when he was revolutionizing PvZ with his Oracle Blinkstalker play. Yeah, MaxPax, he's definitely got the mechanics to still make that work. Trigger's another one of those players who absolutely can play that style still.
Yeah, and the style is so good because you can be so reactive. You can play it in so many different ways. You can play it very transitional. You can play it very aggressive. So you have a lot of options, and also it's very safe, right? Having Blink Stalkers and Shield Batteries and Oracles when you're getting hit by something like a Roach Ravager all in or something like that, it's very, very good tools to have, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. By the way, what do you think about this map here, Magnetic North?
It's very interesting with the rich gas bases in the middle, where it's usually when you have bases like this, they're either very forward like they are here, or they're somewhere in the back somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But on this map, they're so far forward, and it's so exposed, right? Because you're expanding on the other side from the minerals, and the minerals are exposed to the opponent's side. So I'm not sure if these guys are gonna actually go for this. There's always some potential for some weird, you know, third hatch on the rich gas base and go for a Ravager.
So I will say that when it comes to the high yield gases, if you remember, because we've casted a lot on this map, there used to be a more aggressive 3rd base which allowed for high yield gases that were often taken, and we actually casted SHIN beat Hero in this map with an all-in fueled by the high yield gas geyser, but that was removed. That was removed from the map, so there was an update made to the map. The creator felt like it was a little bit too powerful, a little bit too strong, and they did move the high yield gas base to the corner expansion instead. So as a result, we have seen less of those kind of plays and those kind of all-ins, but we still see all-ins regardless, just not emphasizing on the high yield gas geyser base. He was talking about the more exposed expansion in the center, but again, it's more exposed. We don't see players take it.
So far, everything looking very standard. Trigger going for the 2 Adept into Stargate Opener. We see the 3rd Queen before 3rd Hatch for SHIN, which has kind of become the new standard in this matchup, where it just allows you to have that 3rd Queen out a little bit faster, which more safety versus the Oracles. Also, your follow-up timings, the 3rd or the 4th and the 5th Queen are a little bit more timely when it comes to dealing with the Oracle follow-ups and so on. It's just a very, very solid opener.
A couple of Lings got in the natural expansion here of Trigger, so some mining time lost, but with the second adept finishing up, he should be able to clean this up. I like the Ling split here from SHIN, just trying to get as much damage done as he possibly can. Caused some problems over there on SHIN's side. Is our wonderful observer Mapu pointing out the income advantage that SHIN earned for himself for at least a couple of seconds there.
Yeah, you gotta take what you can get, right? So yeah, nothing out of the ordinary yet. Everything looks super standard. First Orco is about to come out. So we'll expect Trigger to just secure the third here and then try to head across the map to actually see if he can find some drone kills here and there.
Yeah, the big moment of deviation that we're waiting for is whether or not Trigger gets early tech. For now, he's going Stargate into a third. We're waiting to see the Twilight Council timing from Trigger. We're expecting SHIN to just drone up until 3 bases. We'll see if SHIN throws down a safety Roach Warren or not, or if he goes for an early Evo Chamber or not. So right now, we're just waiting for tech choices from 2 players.
Usually it's Twilight Council and a Forge as a follow-up for this, but since we've had the patch and then the hotfix, which nerfed Storm a little bit more after the patch because honestly it was very overtuned in the initial reworking. We've had some Protoss players lean more heavily into Colossus-based timings. We've had some players go into Mothership really quickly instead of Storm, and then you get players like MaxPax who just kind of do the tried and true Storm openings a bunch still regardless. But I wonder what the choice will be here from Trigger. I haven't seen too many of his PVZs lately. Although on SHIN's side of things, he might not even give Trigger very much of an option because he's adding in the Roach Warren, a couple more Gas Geysers, the lair is getting started. He might be pretty aggro early.
Yeah, this Roach Warren was a little bit puzzling for me because he's got a full scout, right, and he's on the third base timing and everything. And it's quite an early Roach Warren for this kind of game.
Yeah.
And the lair coming as well. I'm wondering if maybe this can be something like a Roach Queen all-in when he brings the Dropper Lord maybe potentially.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
it could just be
like we did mention that German taxes are very common on Magnetic North. Trigger is going for a standard build, going into a Twilight Council and a Forge for +1 and Blink. So standard play at a Trigger. From SHIN, our eyes are on him to see if he starts up Overlord speed. The Evo Chamber tells us that most likely SHIN is building up towards a longer and later game.
Coming in here for Trigger as he's adding gateways number 3, 4, and 5 right now. They're on the production tab. Is he going to stop there and then tech up more, or will he just continue to add on the gateways? For now, it looks like he's continuing to add on the gateways. Another gets thrown down, so 6 full gateways of production up for him.
Yeah, a little bit different from what we've seen from Classic yesterday, where Classic really liked to go like the same opener, but then just go into the much faster Templar Archives, get towards Storms a lot quicker. He's still getting the Templar Archives here, but with this number of gateways, I expect him to at least port in a couple of Stalkers. Or he could just up to, save them. But usually if they do that, they would like to have the Templar Archives a little bit quicker, so just to have the Storm timing coming in a little bit faster.
Yeah, for sure, especially with how powerful Ling Hydra Bane compositions have been so far.
So behind this SHIN, he is investing into Roach speed, so he's going into Roach Hydra, +1 ranges on the way. He is getting a 4th base, for now just for Lava. We'll see if SHIN does drone up his 4th, or if he commits on 3 expansions.
5 and 6 coming in now for Trigger, so that Templar Archives will be flushed with gas in a moment. Storm probably going to be starting very early. I don't think we're going to see a lot of Archon play here early on for Trigger, as this Templar Archives is late enough as it is, and yeah, it's going to be Storm straight away. Yeah.
This Hydra's already coming in line for SHIN, which is very nice, obviously. Like when you're playing versus a Blink to Storm composition, you don't really want to go Roaches unless you're planning on doing something very aggressive. In this case, he's just going straight into the Hydras. We'll see if he opts to just go for like a Hydra Roach timing here, or if he's actually gonna start droning again. So far, he's just making Hydras on 6 to 7 drones. So it kind of looks like he wants to hit like a Roach Hydra +1 timing here potentially.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards what sort of is saying here. Because of the earlier Roach Warren, because it's making Roaches period, it does look like SHIN wants to be aggressive, right? Otherwise, you do want to skip Roaches. Roaches that don't really scale too well into a longer game. Otherwise, we could be seeing SHIN taking gases and going for a Hive and taking up into Lurkers. But because I'm not seeing any of that, it should just be one big push here from SHIN. And you can already see the supply disparity. To be fair, that is inflated supply because of the Roaches, but this is going to hit quite hard in favor of SHIN.
They take a little bit longer to build, and then you make the cheaper, quicker Roaches to just make your timing line up a bit more smooth, right? And then maybe he'll make some links as he actually starts moving out, but I highly expect him to just try to attack here, because you can't really just sit here and let Trigger build up a high Templar count and Immortals coming online eventually and so on, right? You kind of need to hit the timing here. So the initial wave will be very important, because the initial storms will be very limited, right? There will be maybe 3, 4, 5 storms, and if you can...
Also, I just realized that our overlays were covering the player count. My apologies. My apologies.
Well, it's actually a lot of Templar. I think he's been energy recharging them too. Yeah. They are quite loaded here. Trigger and SHIN meeting themselves in the middle of the map right now. Already 2 storms.
2 storms so far. I believe that was 6 high Templar in total.
A lot of Roaches and Lings to go for the 4th base. I think this is likely going to guarantee a cancel here, as the shield.
Yeah, Trigger's out of position. 4th base going to go down.
Trigger's just going to try and hold on here on 3 bases. Shin, he is not stopping. He wants more than the 4th base. He's queuing up 12 more roaches, starting +2 range attack as well.
Yeah, he still needs to get more down here, right? Like the Trigger's army is still very, very strong if you give it time to get more energy, get more Templars.
And we spoke earlier how open this third base is. You can see he's on the low ground. He's knocking down those rocks to increase the surface area, to increase the concave for Shin.
His army isn't going to get very much better.
We're going to need a lot of storms.
Rallying across the map, but that's basically it. So
That's
he wants to get as much damage done right here and right now. But this angle is pretty good for the storms.
It's going to be 3 storms. This what? Oh, that was the final storm.
Yeah, very good spread from Shin here.
That's all he had left.
Storm's not super effective, and Shin is still maxed out.
That's all he had.
Trigger is slowly dropping in supply, but more importantly, having way less Templar energy.
Yeah.
And he's in the last couple of storms.
Okay, so one left.
Yeah, looks like we have
Does the energy have a charge?
left right here for Trigger. Energy recharge is going to be in the cards here in just a moment. Ooh, blink forward to isolate a couple of those Hydras there on the right side. The shield battery now out of energy.
Shin has done it.
Immortals on the front line absorbing the brunt of the damage, although one of them looks like it's getting very low.
Again, Shinny baited at the storms, and the map itself just works against Trigger. We do have more rattling in. That's the final High Templar morphing into Archons.
And it seems like just barely Protoss is going to survive. That's an ambitious blink forward, though.
Oh.
Yeah, he wants to catch any staggering units before the reinforcements actually can catch
Okay.
up. Does manage to catch a couple of...
Trigger's holding on, but is he overextending?
More time here to actually get storms online. He is chasing though quite far out.
Yeah, he is going to lose the Immortal, or I say that, it got protected by the vision blockers there for just a moment, but still very efficient trade for Trigger.
Okay.
Yeah. Just playing back the injured Stalkers, dodging some of those projectiles, and it seems like he really wants to usher Shin back to his side of the map as he secures the 4th base.
Yeah, with Trigger running into storms, I thought that was it. I thought that was the moment that Shin would break the third, but no, Trigger, he barely had enough Stalkers, had the Immortal as well.
And Trigger is just happier to buy time with his targets, right? As long as he doesn't lose too many. Keeping Shin back and just getting more time, getting more cannons, batteries, Immortals, High Templars, all very good things for Trigger here.
Yeah, and Shigger, I don't know why I keep combining the names of players these past couple of days, but Shin, what I meant to say, he is going for Hydralisks right now. He's building a little bit more of an expensive composition. The first wave was very roach heavy. We had a ton of roaches added into the mix. This time it's mostly Hydras and Lings that are going to be streaming across the map, but I feel like the initial push coming in from Shin was the one that was likely going to get the most damage done, although he is going to force a recall here on this 4th.
Yeah, like usually when you go for these sort of timings, the first initial push is always the strongest one, right? Because Protoss more upgrades comes in, they get more energy on their units.
Oh, the High Templar. Does he catch him? Oh, he gets 3. Maybe? Yeah, we go. There we go.
These Templar, though, those storms not getting too much damage done, and the Archon will get cleaned up very quickly there by Shin. There isn't a lot of splash damage left here in the army of Trigger. 5 more Templar getting warped in. I think some of these have enough energy. This might be 3 or 4 storms in total.
It looks like 3 storms.
Yeah, I feel like Trigger needs to be a little bit careful.
There's one.
Like the last timing is probably dangerous for him. Like as long as he has Templar energy.
There's 2. There's 3. Oh, a little bit Trigger happy.
1 or 2 storms left right now, though, borrowing an energy recharge, and that's a very good one.
That gets caught out. Does pull away in time.
After that, a lot of Protoss units actually taking damage as now Shin actually focus firing down the Templar. There's only 1 high Templar remaining with 75 energy, so there's 1 more storm here for Trigger, but the Protoss army, it's really starting to dwindle in supply. The 4th base got canceled
Trigger,
again,
can he hold on?
Off screen by this squadron of roaches and hydras. And Trigger, it looked like he was getting very close to stabilizing, but Shin just toppled him.
Yeah, it feels like Trigger was a little bit unsure of how all-in actually Shin was, right? Being out on the map this much. That being said, though, he's still trading very decent here in the last couple of skirmishes here with the Stalkers.
Yeah.
There's still a chance for him to stabilize here and survive. Shin supply is not that out of control yet.
Yeah, Shin supply isn't great. Army-wise, it doesn't look bad here for Trigger, but the concerning thing is the fact that the main base and soon the natural expansion are going to be mining out for Protoss, whereas he hasn't been able to secure the 4th base just yet, and he has to replenish the Templar count as well. He's probably warping in a lot of Zealots as a result of that. It's very gas intensive. He's actually giving up on the triangle expansion, instead going to be expanding down towards the 4 o'clock position, and Shin is just immediately
Yeah, he just kind of expands.
Yeah,
like Trigger, he just kind of got a 4th base. I mean, again, we mentioned how open the 4th and the 3rd are on this map.
Near the 4th base.
He just can't expand.
Another attack now coming in. Ling's kind of running all the way here on the backside, trying to find an angle into the natural expansion.
Well,
they are able to get in.
They get in.
Good news for Trigger is that he's already oversaturated on these 3 bases, so losing probes isn't going to hurt that much. But still, this is just another problem for him to deal with.
Yeah, I think Trigger just wants to take like a short, just like breather and just get some more energy on your Templars, and then actually just try.
He's got 3 Templar. He's gonna have 2 storms.
He's just been a little bit too eager to take these fights.
There's a first, there's a second, only 2 storms.
very eager to take these fights as the Lings are still running amok in the main base. Fourth base once more going down. I think it's the fourth or the fifth time that he is trying to build that.
And again, it's been impressive that Trigger survived this long in this game, and to the point where he almost recovered. Like, it was a really impressive defense here from Trigger, surviving a lot longer than we assumed he would, but he's still being broken. Like, it's still so many losses here for Trigger.
It is falling very quickly. The Immortals go down, the Templar go down. We have to now rely on Zealots warping in, but there isn't energy on the shield battery to keep them standing. Another Immortal's going to come through, but the Hydras with +2 weapons. Their DPS is just so high. GG is called. And SHIN kind of played the style that we were expecting him to. He was very aggressive. He was very in your face. And Trigger, while it looked like he had some really good moments, wasn't able to secure a fourth base.
Yeah, it was the kind of game you would expect in coming into this with these two players, right? They're both Trigger playing the kind of standard Oracle Stalker game, and SHIN going for his mid-game timings. And it looked pretty good for Trigger initially, like with the first couple of holds. But then he got a little bit too eager to get back on the map. It's the kind of thing, I think, for the Protoss player where you don't really know, like, is he actually droning behind this? Is he getting infestation pit? Do I need to actually make sure that the creep doesn't get out of control? These kind of things, right? But SHIN was actually just, like, doing the same thing from start to finish there, right? Like, he never let off the gas pedal. And Trigger actually getting caught out a little bit on the map. He had at some point, like, 6 High Templars getting caught a little bit far away from his army. And those kind of things can definitely snowball even after a good initial hold, right?
Yeah, he just wasn't able to muster enough army to secure that fourth base. And in the moments where it seemed like he did, SHIN was still able to find some angles just by sectioning off a couple of roaches.
So, yeah, I just have to echo what sort of said 100%, as we were kind of mentioning. Trigger, his initial hold was very impressive, was very strong, actually. Like, it was crazy to see Trigger just survive the initial wave. But as sort of said, Trigger, he was overeager. He moved out too much, moved out too quickly, and he got caught down the map with his Stalkers and with his High Templar as well. There were a couple of moments here where all Trigger had to do was defend. All he had to do was just stay at home, defend, turtle up, but he was a little bit too eager to be active on the map. He got punished for it because SHIN continued to be going all in. As sort of said, Trigger didn't know if SHIN was droning or not, if he was teching or not. We saw that he wasn't, Trigger wasn't aware, and he got punished for it. GG.
Any chance of Trigger trying to secure a fourth base is now game 2 is loading up. We're going into SHIN versus Trigger. Map number 2.
Like, Stay was trying to emphasize that, like, oh, it's because he didn't have enough army to secure a fourth. Well, he didn't have the army because he was being overly aggressive, right? Like this.
Do we have a proxy hatchery coming in here for SHIN?
So winding it back.
Kind of looks like it, right? A hatch block, or maybe a hidden base. I would expect this is more of a hatch block in the.
Yeah, there's no hidden base here.
He's looking at the gold base.
He's
actually.
People actually take this?
No, he's avoiding the scout. He's avoiding the probe scout. Just avoiding the probe scout, going across the map and going in for the hatch block.
Although I feel like the scout right after the pylon is falling a little bit. It's falling a little bit out of style. Still, SHIN is just gonna be going for the delayed hatch block here, the natural expansion. And I want to pick your brain a little bit on this one because I've discussed this with Tasteless and some other casters before. What do you think the optimal response is for Protoss? Because I asked Scarlet before, and she said probes are for mining. You're not supposed to pull probes. Apparently, Trigger agrees with his Canadian brethren.
I agree as well with that.
Really? Because I feel like anytime I see Classic or really almost any
they
of the
typically pull like
Korean
7
Protoss
probes.
players like Classic and Hero deal against this, they pull 7 or 8 probes almost straight away.
Yeah, I think you're like, when you see the probes coming as a Zerg player, you're already kind of happy because you're already forcing a big reaction. Whereas if you just ignore it, you get maybe a second gateway, you get some Zealots out, and then you clear this, and instead of like getting the fast Nexus, you get a slightly faster Stargate. And then you're able to, once you've actually cleared this out with your gateway units, you can actually put on a lot of counter pressure and actually severely delay the Zerg's third bases instead. So the game kind of becomes very weird, but I think this is the more solid response, whereas I think the probe response has some potential traps as well versus certain like all-in follow-ups that can come in. And this is obviously like something where if you have a player who has practiced this a lot, they will know all the different divergent paths that can happen after this. But most of the time when a macro Zerg like SHIN does this, it's just going to be the simple hatch blocks into a transitional into a normal gamer who just wants to make the game a little bit uncomfortable for Trigger.
Yeah, and I suppose
so I do appreciate that sort of he went into the explanation as to the different responses that you can have in the pros and cons. As he mentioned, this is going to be the 2-gate response, and after dealing with this initial hatchery, it means that Trigger has potential to counterattack and deal damage. As he mentioned, we do have the pylon block, 2 Zealots, 2 Adepts, we do have 2 more Adepts behind this as well, and Trigger can move out to deny mining, to delay the third base, and to even catch the Queen. So there's going to be a lot of potential for Trigger. It's important to note though that that is potential. He's also going to be forcing Lings out of SHIN as well. True. He'll be forcing a response.
Trigger will be able to re-expand fairly soon, and in the meantime time he can put all this pressure on, he can get his Stargate down. And I think Trigger's actually going to end up in a pretty good position here, as long as he doesn't lose any units to Zerglings around or something like that.
Cancels his Cybernetic score at the last possible moment, and now the 2 Zealots and the 2 Adepts are going to try and get pressure done at the natural expansion, because this is the 1 hatchery which is not yet finished here for SHIN. More Lings are in production. Zergling speed, it looks like maybe 30 seconds away right now on the production tab, although SHIN is going to be morphing in 3 Lings with a larva down in the natural expansion. Was wondering if he's going to use those.
So I wonder if Trigger realizes this.
He recalls one.
Yeah.
Oh, both
shame.
Zealots
Shame.
actually. All right, so he does. But this means that there isn't going to be a lot of pressure here on the front lines. And so
Predictions. Did I not open predictions? Oh.
Really not getting their money's worth. It actually makes me wonder whether
no, sorry, my
blocking the natural
apologies.
expansion of SHIN was the
But yes,
correct
my apologies, didn't open predictions. So
because
it's
the
Gamba
hatchery-
time,
the
even
hatchery
in the
that was building
chat.
right now was trying to get up at the 3rd base
can
location.
predict.
Maybe Trigger would have been able to put some more pressure on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so at this point you just gotta be happy as Trigger to be able to force a lot of Zerglings, right? I did like the decision to recall the Zealots over the Adepts, because you still want to keep the Adepts out on the map and potentially try to find whatever pickoff you can. But obviously with speed coming in here, you're not going to find much here at the full up, so you have to see what the Oracle can get down now.
I'm actually surprised that Trigger is such a substantial income advantage with the natural expansion being this delayed. It's a very funky early game.
Yeah, with the double gas mining and the 3rd being the natural base for SHIN, there is like a bit of a hiccup here in the economy for SHIN early on.
Ooh, what's it called? The Watchtower, the Zellnaga Watchtower, excuse me.
Yeah.
Not actually being controlled right now by SHIN, so he does not see the Oracle coming in now to the main base. There is a Spore Crawler in position, but with no
Spore is
queen,
ready.
Trigger might just take the damage.
So he gets 2 drones.
Wondering if he would go for
Not
3
bad.
drones. Instead, he's going to play it safe, confirm 2 kills, and then a retreat out of there.
Yeah, 2 drone is like usually, like if there's a Spore ready, like your 2 drone is usually the most you can expect. Of course, there not being no queen there, he maybe could have gotten 3 with some slight better micro, but that's already good enough for Trigger here, I think.
Yeah. All right, more Adepts.
And you can see the force that Trigger has now. He's got, what, 5 Adepts, 2 Zealots. He'll still be expanding, but he can apply a lot more pressure here in the mid-game.
He might actually just be able to move across the map with the Zealots and the Adepts and get some more pressure done.
Yeah, absolutely. Like at the very least, he'll be able
Oh,
to
he
That's a
overextends.
very big deal here. Because I was gonna say, like, moving across the map here with everything and with the 3rd Oracle, potentially force a lot of units from SHIN. Like you need a very healthy amount of links to actually deal with this, with the Oracles supporting them. But losing the Oracle, obviously, is all of DPS gone from this potential push.
Activating the beam, getting 1 more Zergling, and then retreating out is Trigger. So he's taking that 3rd base. Still no follow-up tech coming in just yet from our Canadian Protoss player. Likely going to be seeing a Twilight Council and a Forge in just a moment. Yep, there's both of them.
Right on cue.
Trigger making me
Standard
look smart.
follow-up.
I always appreciate it.
Early Evo Chamber at a SHIN means +1 melee.
Yeah, definitely
Interling Hydra.
Adepts to at least, try to do something. Because you don't just want to sit there with your Adepts, right, transitioning to the mid-game. Once you have your Stalkers out and everything, they don't really add that much value to your army anymore. So definitely better to try to get some value out of them here early on. But again, would have been amazing if you had a 3rd Oracle with this, because then you could actually potentially threaten the queens even.
Yeah, SHIN wouldn't be injecting during that whole time because I feel like it'd be all hands on deck, pulling the queens to control this junction between the natural and the 3rd base. And the 4th base coming down could be a potential target. SHIN is proactively moving down a couple of queens just in case those oracles activate, and he is going to get a really nice catch on these Adepts. They aren't going to trade terribly here versus the Zerglings, but you want to get a better trade than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but he does have the blink coming in. He's getting 1 more gas here as well, 2 more gateways. So we should be going into some blink stalkers here. I don't really expect him to be able to do too much because of how this early game is played out. It's kind of like the timing's a little bit off, right? I don't really expect the blink stalkers to actually be able to find that much value unless you really, really commit. But I feel like at this point we're more likely just going to see the same thing we saw last game with the shield battery coming in, probably just Templar Archives coming down, and you're going into Storm.
And SHIN's actually cutting probes, or drones I should say, significantly earlier.
Yeah, that's a littling bane actually. Jesus.
This time at 57 workers, he's entering the 4th base. He wants to
committing
shut
quite
down
hard.
the 3rd base of Trigger, not the 4th. And it's going to be a big Ling Baneling timing attack. Looks like this will be done right, or it's actually going to commence right before.
Yeah, we'll see if we can break through. 1 shield battery, Banelings are rolling in. No sentries.
Honestly,
oh my god.
how many units Trigger has on the board?
Doesn't get in.
I like it. This is going to be pretty good. Oracles are coming back in time. It's actually a little bit of a mess. He is able to get some of these drones.
Yeah, the Baneling connections were lackluster. He didn't get in.
I thought that was going to go way
Trigger
better
holds.
for Trigger.
Yeah, he had a really good...
For SHIN, excuse me.
Yeah, there was a really good unit positioning in the 3rd base there, right? Where the Lings
Banelings didn't connect.
After the Banelings were gone. So that's actually ended up being quite good for Trigger initially.
Oh no.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit of overconfidence coming in from Trigger. He might have thought that was just the one wave and there wouldn't be a follow-up, but Shin was getting locked and loaded for another one. He's still sitting at 50-something drones, so he hasn't been doing anything except building army. And this is a much more vulnerable-looking third base. The Oracles are lower on energy.
Oof.
The shield battery now is under threat. The Probes have to evacuate once more.
Gets us around this time, kind of.
Service area on the gateway units.
Yeah, with the +1, the Lings are getting a lot better trade than they normally would have in these situations, right? And it's still making even more Lings here, just flooding across the map. Hydra then coming in behind now, because eventually we will have to deal with these Oracles. Trigger even making a third Oracle behind us to deal with all this.
Yeah, but the two Oracles that he's got are very low on energy, and energy recharge was used already here on the Nexus. So
Lings is still flooding across the map. The Oracles are running out of energy. He's going for the expansion. Can he kill the Nexus? Can he kill the... not
He's not
quite.
going to stick it. Instead, as soon as the next Oracle comes through, he's just going to be piecing out for a little bit. 4 more Banelings now morphing in.
He's not stopping.
The third base alive here is Trigger. We can still definitely stabilize with Templar Archives, but the third going down would be a massive, massive blow.
Banelings for the first time they actually get in.
Shin to let off the gas pedal, but he is not.
Oh no, he's going for it.
Really
oh my god.
Especially with that +1 melee.
Yeah, he's done it.
The third base is likely going to fall. Another recharge comes
It was
through.
such a long all in here. Such a long all in for Shin.
You're getting so much damage done. The Stalkers, many deeply in the red and the orange, are going to blink back into this choke point, but it is a 3-base Shin who is 4-base, excuse me, who is starting to drone again against a 2-link span.
BRB, hold on.
Yeah, he also has the Hydra up now, so eventually, like once he's done droning, he's going to go back into making Hydras as well, which will negate the usefulness of the Oracles in these situations, right? But I think the big thing here is obviously like losing the Oracle earlier on kind of led to this situation where he didn't really have enough Oracle energy to properly deal with this, and he also kind of missed the initial Baning morph, which is a big deal when you're dealing with this. The first wave looked pretty good, but then, like you mentioned, the Oracle energy just ran out, right? And then once the Oracle energy is gone and there's +1 Lings versus Blink Stalkers, that's a very hard situation to deal with for Trigger here.
Yeah, actually I thought the very first engagement was going to go much better there for Shin, but Trigger was able to make some magic happen with a unit positioning there at the third base. And now it's just so many Lings here. We do have, I think, oh, there isn't an Archon. Oh, there is. It's in the natural expansion, though. It's finally coming in. It won't have the shield battery, and there isn't Storm available, so that critical splash damage here for Trigger. He's blinking to try and survive it, to try and mitigate the the surround that the Lings had, but it's a little bit too late.
Yeah, I think it was Shin trying to slow Trigger down a little bit more while he's setting up his Hydra transition here. You don't want to use
so running it back again, Shin went for a Ling Bane all-in with +1 melee. He cut workers at 57, and it came down to the third base. If Trigger was able to defend and save the third base, then Trigger can recover and actually play a game out of this. Unfortunately, he lost the third. He lost the mineral line as well. Shin, he barely broke through. Imagine a world where Trigger didn't lose his first Oracle. Remember that? Remember Trigger, he lost his first Oracle early on.
There isn't much of an angle. The Hydras are already out.
And with that Oracle dying, that meant one less Oracle to defend. That meant a bit of a difficult defense at the third base, or a much more difficult defense at the third base. Everything could have changed with one extra Oracle, with that much more NGs to defend. Alas, Shin, he broke the third base just barely, and with that, Shin has a massive lead, getting a fourth, getting a fifth base, going for a Doom drop into the main. He's crazy, Pappy, he's crazy.
After that last push, and now Shin, he's getting ready. He's posturing outside of the third base once more here, morphing in even more Banelings.
Yeah, he does have cannons and batteries coming in for Trigger here, so he's setting up to actually deal with this, but Shin realizes there's almost no defense here in between the natural and the third, right? So he's moving around to hit from this angle instead.
Wonder how many storms we're going to have available
These
here
two Hydras.
because Shin is coming in on
massive Doom drop into the main.
Drop in the main base, and then a push here between the natural and the third. And I love the decision also to only drop half of the Lings there in the main. He's going to now go into the natural expansion with a ton more of them, but thinking a little bit wiser of it.
Baits Trigger.
Instead of just getting the damage done he can in the main.
He baits him down, goes back in, having fun with the Trouble Lords.
For a beautiful arc between the natural and the third. We have 3 separate forces here for Zerg.
Okay, we got 3 High Templar. Sorry, we got 6.
Jesus. Maybe a dozen Lings in total. Banelings not really finding.
Oh, he gets a Templar.
They do get one very high energy Templar. So
and now there's no storms left.
Yeah, zero storm.
Going to be completely uncontested here, and they're just gonna
gets in.
line, and that's going to be too much damage for Trigger to handle, I think.
I mean, this army is so
Bane's actually going for the Stalkers.
He set up this Hydraling
but
melee timing beautifully, and that is going to be Shin taking a 2-0 lead over Trigger in this best of 5 in very convincing fashion. 2 really aggressive games. Game number 1 going for what, like 66, 67 drones, about 3 base saturation. Roach Hydra. And then a very wonky start to game number 2. We had the hatch block in the natural expansion, and then we had a Cybernetics core built to the natural Obserg to try and block the hatchery over there. And the Adepts and Zelts, they really didn't get very much damage done. We had a big attack at the third base on, what, 55? 56 drones?
57.
And then the follow-up punch was just, oh man, it was massive.
Yeah, absolutely. The initial like hash block and everything, they kind of like transitioned eventually into like a somewhat even normal game.
Yeah.
But then I think just like the Trigger not being quite ready for this Ling Bane attack, and obviously losing the Oracle was a big deal there, right?
Big deal.
And then after that, SHIN just got a massive lead after the...
I'm glad sort of got there. As we were trying to emphasize ourselves, again, I'm almost 100% certain if Trigger didn't lose that first Oracle, he defends so much cleanly. Oh, he has a much cleaner defense at his third base, and then he holds, he defends, he snowballs out of control from there. It all came down to that all-in at the third, and again, for Trigger to lose that first Oracle was huge. You saw how much damage the Oracles were doing defensively for Trigger. Like, they were going to town on the Ling Bane, and with one extra Oracle, that is so much more energy to work with. That is so many more dead Lings, so many more dead Banelings, and it would have been a stronger defense there. But alas, Trigger did lose that at the beginning of the game. That was game. That was game then and there. GG, well played. With that SHIN, he barely broke that that third base. That's why I'm pushing against what State said. How it was how, like, you know, we've had like a clean series so far by SHIN. Not at all. Like, that was a close defense for Trigger where he barely didn't have enough. It took a long time for the Ling Bane to eventually break the third base. I think it took like three waves of Ling Bane to break the third. GG, well played. Likewise, it was actually quite similar with game number 1, where initially Trigger defended as well. So yeah, in general here, I would say that Trigger, he's actually had a better defense in both game 1 and game 2, but there's just been these little things, whether it's game 2 losing the first Oracle, or game 1 overextending and pushing on the map after defending too soon, right? It's like two little moments here where Trigger did slip up, which did end up costing him the series or the game so far. We'll see if Trigger can tighten up here coming into game 3. We'll see. So far, SHIN is up 2-0, and we'll be back soon in 4 minutes with game number 3. See you soon. See you soon. Oh, I stay lunacy. And welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Whew. We returned here with our series, with our ZvP here in the RSL 2025 Revival StarCraft League Season 3 Playoffs Day number 2. We're still mid-series here with SHIN versus Trigger. SHIN is up 2-0, and we're jumping into game number 3. So far, both game 1 and game 2 have been very close. Like, Trigger, he's barely not held on. SHIN has gone for different all-ins. Game 1, all-in. Game 2, all-in. Game 3, most likely another all-in. And Trigger has barely not had enough to defend. Whether it's game 1, Trigger defending and then overextending, pushing out on the map, or game 2, where Trigger did lose the Oracle early on and barely didn't have enough to defend against the Ling Bane all in as well. So these small slight little mistakes have been costing Trigger these games. We'll see if we can tighten up coming into Winter Madness. Oh boy.
And that just catapulted SHIN into an economic position where he could really leverage the strength of his forces and push Trigger to a victory. We're going into game number 3 now. Winter Madness is loading in. SHIN only one map went away from advancing to the next round in the RSL. Trigger fighting for his life in this tournament.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't mind Trigger trying something a little bit different, just to like get back some momentum in the series. Like, if you just keep doing the same standard play, you just have to. The only thing you can do better is really just like to fix the small mistakes that you made in the previous games, right? Like losing the Oracles, getting caught out of position a couple of times. I would much prefer to see like just something of a curveball, do like an adept timing or something. Just try to get some momentum back, and then you can fall back on your standard play after that. I think just trying to just like battle this out with just pure standard play from here on out will be very difficult.
So one feels the validation here out of sort of once again emphasizing the Oracle, once again emphasizing Trigger being caught out of position. I would push back against what sort of just said though. He was talking about Trigger mixing things up coming into Winter Madness. I would push against that just because I feel like Winter Madness is actually a very good map to defend on, to turtle up, and to play standard on. Again, when it comes to Magnetic North, that favors all-ins. Magnatha also more open. I would say that here it is easier to turtle up and defend on 4 bases. So if Trigger were to play standard, this is the map that I would want to see that on. I would say that if Trigger were to mix things up, I would have wanted to have seen that on Magnetic North instead, right? So it's a little bit unfortunate just how the maps have played out so far.
Players have slowly but surely discovered that minerals are king in early game StarCraft. every single build just keeps getting more and more mineral heavy, right?
Yeah, they are pretty good, the minerals. It allows you to build more workers, so you can get even more minerals.
Yeah,
crazy.
that's nice.
Yeah,
That's
very good.
That stonks right there.
Yeah. But yeah, this map, obviously a bit more of a easier defensive setup around the third base and the fourth base. So if SHIN does want to go for something like a mid-game Hydra Bane timing or Roach Bane or whatever he wants to go for, it's a little bit more tricky to make it work on a map like this, because you either have to walk up a ramp into the natural or very choked up areas into the third base and fourth base locations, right? So Trigger should be pretty happy to actually just try to defend on this map if SHIN does go for something like that. But we'll have to wait and see what they actually opt to do.
Yeah, securing 3 bases is very easy on this map compared to the other ones that we have in the pool, just because that
State, he's touching on it.
Base, you can park your army there, and it's very easy to pivot down to the south.
As you mentioned, like this map, it is easier to defend on 3 and 4 bases. That's why I would want to see more standard play out of Trigger, specifically on Winter Madness.
Because at that point, usually Zergs are adding in some of their better ranged firepower, whether that be Hydras or even fast lurkers. But 3 bases certainly going to be very secure here for Trigger should he decide to go for it. And actually going to be a pylon coming in here at the third base. So just doing anything he can to throw a wrench into the works. Will he be able to snipe that drone with a shade? He's able to block.
Oh, he gets it. Very nice.
Nice move coming in by Trigger.
Yeah, I think he probably didn't realize how close the probe was there. When he was just a little bit out of position with the links, saying, let's the pylon go down here in this situation. With this opener, with the 3-edge opener, it's kind of like a small weakness here. If you do get pylon block, you're very low on time to actually fix that situation and be able to get your third down. Whereas compared to where you go for a more slightly earlier third, you would have more time to deal with that pylon, right?
Yeah, it was a really nice move. It's rare that a player is able to pull that off in a pro game, just because usually the Zergs are a little bit more on top of denying the probe from getting the pylon down there at the third base, especially with how late the gateway came in here for Trigger. I mean, that was just pure finesse. As 2 more adepts are going to be shading in. SHIN with a very quick pullback and nice focus fire, by the way, here for Trigger. Just focused firing down individual.
Gets 1, gets 2 drones.
And actually even getting
3.
2 more drones on top of it. I think that's a pretty good trade there for those 2 adepts. He's able to take the third base behind it. 4 drones in total going down, as well as 3 lings. And now the Oracle has to stay at home to defend, just because so many adepts were sacrificed in the early game. But once that second Oracle is out, Trigger will be able to get back on the map and try and get some damage done. Yeah,
this was kind of those trades where you're you don't feel super good about it, but you don't feel bad about it either, right? It's kind of okay, this was alright. Went around what I expected. And we're just going to transition from a game. Like you mentioned, lose the ability to harass with the initial Oracle. But we already
so from here, we're getting to our further attack. It is going to be a Twilight Council on a Forge out of Trigger, going into a standard follow-up once again, and SHIN going into his third base saturation. As they were emphasizing, SHIN did stumble his way into the mid-game with a later third, a slightly later third base, and even losing some more workers as well. So I would give the slight edge to Trigger, but for the most part, we're heading in towards the mid-game. And so far, there's been no major signs of aggression out of SHIN. So our eyes on SHIN, he's actually opening up a lair first before Roach Warren and before Evo Chamber.
Obviously, you'll have 1 less Oracle, so you're a little bit more vulnerable to mass link stuff, for example. But because you have the faster timing, the Zerg also will have slightly less units, right?
I think it's a very smart move. 2 more drones getting picked off here in the natural expansion, as Trigger not even really losing that much hull. Just a little tiny bit of damage on 1 Oracle in total, as he's been slowly but surely able to whittle down the economy of SHIN. Just a tad, delaying the third base, picking off 2 or 3 drones here and there. He's going to try and pivot right back down into the third base, but really good queen positioning is going to limit Trigger to just 1 drone kill. He does get a couple of lings for his trouble, which is nice.
Yeah, it's actually not too bad getting the couple of lings here, because you are going for the...
I gets a probe.
But it's actually nice to lower the link count just a little bit, because you're going for this adept follow-up, and also the stalkers down the line would prefer if there was less links.
4 lings now going into the natural expansion. Is he going to allow that shade to complete? No, not with the lings surrounding them, as we have gateways just slowly getting added in here for Trigger. I think potentially going up into 6 gateways now with that Arobo.
In terms of being easy to defend, which expansion are you referring to? Natural plus west or east? I'm referring to linear expansions. Basically, the same bases that SHIN has taken. So you take the triangular third, and then you take the 4th base right next to it, which is where Trigger should be expanding as well. As SHIN is going for the hidden spire. Okay.
So I wonder if the Hydra list then is just kind of...
It's fake out.
There to get scouted. I mean, it's so obvious here in the third base.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, please scout me.
Okay, cheeky moves out of SHIN, going for the hidden spire, going into mutas. Let's go.
So he knows what's up.
Yeah, it's going to be a 3-base timing. He's adding 6 more gateways right now.
Yeah, the good thing here for Trigger, I think, is that his timing with the Blink Stalkers will hit before the mutas come out, right? So he can potentially just force him into either...
So, a couple things here. I do like the idea of SHIN going into mutas here on Winter Madness, just because it is difficult to break your opponent with a ground-based composition, which we were discussing earlier. So going to mutas is a good way to bypass that. That's why we see muta play more viable on maps like Tokamak, on maps like Winter Madness, and on maps like Maganatha. These larger maps where you can get away with a 4-base economy, as as the Protoss player. So going to Mutas here, I would say, is really smart. It makes a lot of sense based on the map. But as sort of just said, Trigger does have an earlier timing where he's pushing, where you could try to punish him.
Of gateways, and because those adepts didn't get traded, they're actually going to be very useful here versus the Lings.
And Shin, he's vulnerable.
He's in the game a little bit here, getting infestation pit. Like, he's in desperate mode right now. He needs to somehow hold on here. He could potentially try to counterattack with the Mutas, so maybe sack a base or something, but that's also very dicey to go for. So most likely he's going to try to fight with the Mutas here. We'll have to see. There's a very strong.
As in gets a queen, nice pick up.
Yeah, enough stalkers to blink forward in one shot.
Mutas forced to defend.
The Lings getting caught in the stasis trap.
Prism is a good pickup for sure.
Yeah, Shin is able to take down the Warp Prism, but there's just so many Stalkers and Adepts that I don't even think Trigger's going to mind just rallying these across the map.
It's just too much.
He's done it. He's kind of caught in the middle. He even
we have a series, Pappy. We have a series.
With those Mutalisks, he was deciding whether he should try and defend the third base or should try and go for the base trade, but oh no, as it turns out, the Blink Stalker timing, just the perfect kill move there versus the Mutas. Yep. I think Trigger was probably pretty surprised to see the Mutas. He was expecting, I think, Hydralisks, but hey, that's even better.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing where Shin was looking to throw another curveball and just like try to punish Trigger's standard play, just the fast tempo archives into Storm, into fourth base. But Shin already, like we talked about in the early game a little bit, that I would prefer to see Trigger do something a little bit different, just to not keep doing the same thing over and over again when Shin is throwing these curveballs. And it works out very well for Trigger, where he actually managed to catch like a perfect counter build, basically, towards what was being thrown at him.
Yeah, GG, well played. Winding up back here again, I do actually still appreciate that Shin went for this specifically on Winter Madness. We've seen a lot of hyper aggression out of Shin, and that kind of play does not work on Winter Madness, or I should say the map is working against you. So try to go into Mutas, was shut down by the early blink timing. GG, well played. And I'm really curious to see what the next map is going to entail. If I remember correctly, I think the next game is going to be on Tokamak, which would be another really good map for Trigger to set up on 4 bases and to be a little bit more defensive, I should say. We'll see.
All these hectic problems are happening, all these wrenches getting thrown into the works, these little tiny fires he's got to pull out, whereas Trigger was just cruise control.
Yeah, when you're going for these like aggressive Blink Stalker timings, you can always find some value, right? The big scary thing is like, oh, what if my opponent is going for something like a big Hydra Ling all-in of like 60 to 70 drones? That could potentially hit like a counter timing after the initial blinker timing. That's the scariest thing you're playing against as a Blink Stalker player. But whenever your opponent is doing some tech-heavy build like he was there,
yeah, it's Tokamak.
You're pretty happy to just be able to slowly eke out the value out of your Stalkers. And in this case, you just got a lot more value than he was expecting, I think.
All right, we go to game number 4 now. Trigger with an instant scout. Not even waiting for that pylon to get thrown down at the natural expansion.
But here we go. Letting it to Tokamak. Again, Tokamak is the most defensive map in this tournament map pool, as I would say probably second to Winter Madness. Sorry, Winter Madness is second to this.
But I'm happy for this series to go on a little bit longer.
But Tokamak is a larger map, has a very secure 4-base setup. The rationale for this, compared to Winter Madness and compared to any other map, is because on 4 bases there's only 2 attack paths, whereas even on Winter Madness there's 3 attack paths. Usually there's a ramp or there's an entrance into the natural, but here on Tokamak that entrance is walled off by rocks. So only 2 ramps, only 2 entrances I should say, into 4 bases makes it easy to rotate back and forth between those 2 entrances. So Trigger should have an easier time defending. This is where once again the pressure is going to be on Shin, and I would say that Muta play is viable here. Seeing Mutas is viable on Tokamak. But we just saw Mutas, right? We just saw them on Winter Madness. So going Mutas 2 games in a row is typically ill-advised. So we should be seeing something different here out of Shin. We could see him be very tech-heavy and very greedy. We could see him rush into lurkers, for example, which is how a lot of Zerg players kind of approach players on Tokamak. Is just like, you know what? I can't break you early on. Let's just be hyper-greedy, drone up heavily, tech up heavily, and rush into lurker tech to try to hit a timing before Sky Toss. So that is going to be an option available here to Shin, but we'll see. We'll keep an eye on his tech. It's still very early in the game.
Go back home and get my 3rd base back up.
Well, for now, we're going to have to wait and see what the tech of choice will be from both players. Circling speed should be coming in pretty soon here for Shin. Just a little bit slow saturating that gas, focusing instead on the minerals. And on Trigger's side of things, I'm imagining we're going to have a Stargate again. I don't know if he's going to go into Storm quite as quickly. It seemed like just leaning heavily onto the gateway units in game number 3 really paid off for him. And I would love to see him mix it up once more here in this game with something like a fast mothership or just some other tech coming in.
Yeah, like Trigger's definitely one of those players who will go Stargate every single game.
Yep.
But he does have some, like we saw in the last game, some variants and twists on what he does with the follow-ups. When obviously like the target opener is just a super solid way to play. Like it gives you safety, it gives you map control, it gives you potential to harass as well. So yeah, no
This time pylon block is unsuccessful.
favoring this build.
Yeah, it feels like the only non-Stargate build that we have in PvZ is 4-gate glaives, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just if you want to take a third base, the best way to do it's an Oracle. Otherwise, speedlings are a very big problem in the early game here.
I'd push back against that. Outside of glaive adept builds, there are still some DT openers that are very prevalent throughout the scene, alongside glaives.
Might be able to get one probe, a little bit damage there in the natural expansion, but with 2 adepts chasing, he's not gonna be able to get it. Instead, spots the Oracle coming in. It's a little bit of information.
I think we saw that at Classic and Hero this week. True.
Amount of void array is still nice.
Yeah, this is kind of link scout you do to just make sure that there's nothing weird.
Like mixing in Dark Templar, I mean.
Instead of Stargate and stuff like that, right?
Saw that versus Raynor earlier in the League Cup.
They either try to actively deny these link scouts, or they just don't care. Like, okay, just come in and scout me, that's fine. In this case, Trigger was just more focused on actually getting these adepts out and trying to get across the map. Ends up having to pull them back home, so that's also very nice for Shin, right? There's no adept pressure on his side of the map here.
Gonna be a fast third base coming in here for Trigger. We'll see if that Oracle's gonna go for harassment or if he's gonna play safe. I think Shin might have traumatized him a little bit with game 1 and game 2. All the pressure as Trigger's keeping both Adepts and the Oracle back safe at home right now.
Yeah, and Shin is definitely somebody who will make like a round of like 16 to 20 links if he thinks you're gonna move out with that Oracle and try to cancel the third behind it, right? So definitely be giving him the respect he deserves here in the early game.
Yeah, so far we've had a pretty passive start here. Both players getting their third bases up and running. There's no early tech, not yet. So yeah, so far we're just droning up into the mid game.
Very, very keen timing coming in here by Shin.
Yeah, looking like the two Stargate units opener against.
Standard follow-up, Twilight Council Forge, plus on a blink.
We'll see if he commits as hard as
This is later compared to last game. Last game, this was thrown down earlier in the third base progression. Now it's thrown down as it's finishing.
The initial 2 link scout in the early game.
Layer first out of Shin. Okay.
Build there for Trigger, and now the follow-up here with the Overlord. It is going to cost 1 Overlord.
We saw that last game.
Just knowing the timing of the Twilight Council and the Forge is going to be a breath of relief here on the Zerg side of things. There are no curveballs coming your way. You can just macro up. You do still have to deal with these Oracles, which we're able to get a couple of drone kills. But
so going layer first means that we're not going for the early Eva chamber for +1, which means we're not going Ling Hydra. This can be Roach into Hydra. This could be Spire Tech. This most likely is going to be +1 range out of the Eva chamber, not melee. We'll keep an eye on Shin if he goes to the Roaches.
Safe and standard here, I would imagine, from Shin's side.
in terms of development here for Trigger, it looks very similar, or at least it did until the Templar Archives got thrown down to the previous game. Yeah, just going up to the 4-gate +1 and Blink.
And again, there's no pressure on Trigger. Like, he's taking up into Storm, which is the correct thing to do. Just take up and get a fourth. Just take up, be defensive, get a fourth base. As we mentioned, yep, +1 range. As we mentioned, melee is only done if you go for Eva Chamber before Lair. This was after Lair, so a higher chance of going into Roach Hydra. Here it looks like purely, like, focusing on Hydra tech. And if you remember, at the very beginning of this series, we spoke about how potentially we could see Shin be very tech-heavy, but he's actually going for the same build as last game, going for the Spire at the same time, going into Mutas 2 games in a row. Bold move.
It's interesting to me that Shin is mixing in the Spire. I guess he didn't really get to play the Muta game that he wanted.
I mean, we spoke about this at the beginning of this game, if you recall, how I like the idea of going Mutas on Tokamak. I don't like the idea of going Mutas 2 games in a row. So this is a bold move here by Shin, but he might catch Trigger off guard. The plus side is that this time Trigger isn't going for a big +1 timing like we saw last game. So Trigger won't suddenly kill Shin. Shin, he will get away with this, for the most part.
Blink isn't done yet, so
oh, nice round. Oh my god.
All three.
Jesus.
And he sees the Templars now as well. That was a great pickup for Shin. Also gets a good scouting at the same time.
Yeah, and it might not seem like a very big deal, but losing 3 Stalkers when your opponent is going to be going Muta.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's quite impactful. Oh, no, even losing one of these
got the Oracle.
Here to the Hydra is so painful.
Oh my god.
I think it absolutely is going to be a lot of Mutas because he was starting to build the gases.
And what that means, without that Oracle, less scouting, less information, and Trigger, he does not know what's going on. He sees Hydras.
Shin's army composition, it is going to be very larva intensive. Likely going to be Ling, Banelings, and Hydras. Or not Hydras, excuse me, Mutalisks.
There's no Baneliness.
Like there's only 7 Mutas here, and then just go back into the ground army.
Yeah, we're still going into range upgrade, so it's going to be 7 Mutas. That is enough to one-shot probes, and then it's going to be a ground army follow-up.
Oh well, if I end up making more Mutas, +1 will be good. If we go into late game and potentially Broodlords down the line, +1 could be good. Raptors will make use of it, so I'm just going to get it just because I have the Spire.
Right.
Seems like he's just going to make the 7 Mutas here, and then probably transition back into ground, I would imagine.
Well, he's still keeping the gas. He hasn't decided what he wants to do yet. I wonder, I think if Trigger were to start pushing out, then he might just go
makes
into
5 more.
But because Trigger is staying back on his side of the map, Shin's like, all right, you know what? I have a little bit more space, a little more time. Let's queue up 5 more Mutalisks instead. As the Lings do get denied, going for a cancel here at the 4th base, even as Storm, only damaging them just a little bit. But that buys time
into the main.
for these Mutas to get into the main. There is a photon cannon already, and Trigger with the instant warping up to Stalker. So only
3 probes, nothing
falling.
at the natural.
Usually the initial flock of Mutas gets a little bit more damage done.
Yeah, like with the initial flock of Mutas, you're used to pick up whatever probes you can, but you're also pretty happy. Like if you're, in this case, you're probably not that happy, but because you're going back into Mutas. But normally, if you just make these initial round of Mutas, you're happy to just force out more Stalkers, right? Because if he's not making Stalkers, he would be making High Templars instead. But since we're going into the Mutas, I think Shin is not so happy about losing these Mutas and also seeing more Stalkers.
I would agree with what sort of just mentioned, how this is fine damage for Shin if he was going Ling Hydra, but he chose to double down and go into Mass Muta, which means he needs to snowball harder. He needs more damage. He can't afford to lose his Mutas like this.
For not that much damage. When usually, I feel like Mutalisk play, it's a very momentum-based composition. You're expecting to get a lot of damage done with the initial move out there on those Mutas.
Shin shuts down the Oracle scouting from the jump. Don't think Trigger lost much losing on Oracle. I mean, it's more about denying vision, denying scouting, keeping it hidden.
Showing up now with another wave of a large amount of Mutas. So we'll have to see what Trigger decides to
We're
do.
going for the base trade.
Accept the base trade.
Yeah, he's going to accept the base trade, but already a lot of gateways getting unpowered. The 4th base is...
So Shin is in the main base, he's in the 4th base as well. At the same time, Trigger pushing right down the heart of the army. He does have Storm, bear that in mind. Trigger, he does have the better army and a head-on fight.
Trigger, one of these expansions. Shin, he's focusing right now on the production. Those minerals are going to be floated almost no matter what here from Trigger's side of things, right?
Yeah, the problem with like, just recalling here from Trigger as well is that there's so many hatcheries on the map for Shin, right? So if you just like kill a couple bases and recall, Shin will just saturate the new bases immediately, and you're in a rough position as Trigger. So he kind of has to find a bit more
there's one Storm. Very nice Storm. Oh my god.
That's an excellent Storm.
A bit of friendly fire.
As well.
It lasts a little bit longer than anybody expected.
Trigger is turning around. Kind of.
All right, some more Stalkers now going into the main base, but there isn't really much
Shin, he
left
breaks
here,
into
and
the natural.
Actually doesn't have the energy for a
The army's been dealt with.
yet, so probes almost come.
We have, I believe, the High Templar coming home.
Trigger is down to 2 workers in total. I'm not quite sure exactly where they are on the map. Oh, recall is on cooldown, it looked like. Oh no, for Trigger, this is a little bit of a precarious situation right now in the natural expansion. He's getting a ton of damage done on Shin's side of the map, and the ground army for Trigger, much better than the ground army here for Shin. All right,
nice Storm.
The supplies, they don't quite tell the full story because Shin's got 30 drones and Trigger has.
Mutas are going for the dive. He wants a High Templar. He's going to get him.
So effective, man. These
my god.
getting a lot of damage done. No kills, though.
Yeah, the problem here is for Trigger will be like, you will need to stay out on the map, but you also need to protect your building.
No, the Templar, no! He gets 1, 2, 3! Oh god! Oh, Jesus.
I think at least 1 Muta going down. That could have been a lot more if there were a little bit more ticks and damage.
Yeah, the second Spire is about...
There are so many more Mutas at home, yeah.
as well. Yeah, this is pretty much game now for Shin.
Oh, it was looking a little bit good there for Trigger for a moment, but Shin with some very nice moves, especially catching the Templar there at the 3rd base. If those Storms were able to get some more damage on the Mutas, maybe just kill, I don't know, half of them. I mean, so many were just 1 or 2 ticks away from getting taken down. I think he might have been able to stabilize, but instead it's 2 Archons, 5 probes, and a Dream here versus a Shin who is still sitting.
Yeah, it was just a really rough position for Trigger. Like, he decided to go for the all-in. Alas, he ended up turning back around with part of his army. The High Templar got caught out, and now GG gets called. Shin will take the series 3-1.
Really rough position there for Trigger in the end.
Yeah, base trades versus Mutas are probably one of the hardest things to do in StarCraft 2, honestly. It felt like Trigger might have a chance, given the timing that he moved out on the map with all those Stalkers, all those Storms, but yeah, the Muta flock was just absolutely massive in the second wave.
Yeah, I think he got a little bit fooled by it, because normally when you go into like this mass Muta play, you will just constantly be enforced with Mutas, right? And you try to be very conservative with your initial Mutas. But in this case, Shin just did the first 7 Mutas, went in, and like you mentioned,
Is this live?
Yes. And then did the follow-up wave of Mutas. So Trigger just thought it was these initial 7 harassment Mutas, and he's just gonna fall back into
the mobility of the Mutas made a difference. Kind of. Like, we were trying to emphasize the fact that it came down to, 1, the lack of scouting, which was brutal, which allowed the Mutas to deal as much damage as they did, which forced the base trade, right? Obviously, right? Because of the Mutas being unscouted, because of the Mutas doing damage, we saw that Trigger, he did decide to commit to the base trade instead, which again did have potential. The reality is that Trigger, when it comes to his main army, did have a superior composition, but going into a base trade against Ling Muta is brutal just because they're so much faster to wreak havoc, to deal more damage, to depower all the production buildings. We then had Trigger make the decision, a really rough decision, to turn back around, right? It's either you commit to the base trade or you turn around. He turned around with half his army and he got picked apart. With that, he was picked apart. He lost all the High Templar, lost all the Archons. You could argue that if he kept everything together, then maybe he can pull that off. But the reality is that in a base trade, he's going to be destroying buildings that much slower than his opponents. So GG. GG, well played. With that, congratulations. Congratulations here to SHIN. He does eliminate Trigger from the tournament. Again, it was a really close series. If you weren't here for it, Game 1 and Game 2 was so close. Mainly, it was Trigger making small mistakes. If you remember in Game 1, Trigger was successfully defending against the all-in on Magnetic North, and Trigger did decide to push out too early, too soon, and got caught out on the map twice. It happened twice where he got caught out, whereas he was having some really powerful defenses, but all he had to do was just stay at home and turtle up and capitalize on his greater economy. But didn't quite do that. Was maybe a little bit overconfident. Likewise, in game number 2, we saw Trigger lose an Oracle early in the game. He lost an Oracle early against a Ling Bane all-in. That Oracle would have been huge, and he didn't have it, of course. GG. GG, really close series. With that, we're now getting into our next game. We're going to be getting in towards our next series. It's going to be Hero versus Raynor in a PVZ best of 5. This is going to be a rematch. If you remember, we did cast Hero versus Raynor in a best of 7 in Little League Cup, and Hero did defeat Raynor 4-1. It was a very one-sided series. Hero did beat Raynor 4-1, but it was very aggressive as well. If you remember, Hero did a different build every game, and he was so unorthodox. Hero, he went for a Tempest Rush, he went into Glaive Adepts, he went into Blink DTs, he went into early charge. Like, Hero was hyper aggressive. I think only one game he played Standard. Only one game in that best of 7, and Raynor had a really hard time keeping up. But you know, now Raynor's getting more experience against Hero. Now he's a little bit more familiar with how chaotic Hero can be. I'm sure that Raynor's going to have a stronger showing here against Hero. So, best of luck. Best of luck. I think that's going to be the next series. It's either going to be Hero versus Raynor or Mar versus Max. We'll find out soon. We'll find out. And Trigger didn't have a base trade to use during the recall, right? I believe he did have a recall if he wanted to use it. I believe that they were discussing like whether or not it would be it'd be wise to go for a recall. It's always difficult just because if you do decide to recall, like your opponent, they just come out ahead in the base trade because they're able to just keep destroying buildings and they have more hatcheries back at home. But that was also an option as well, right? To try to recall and try to get on top of the army, to try to get on top of the mutas. But again, just a really chaotic situation there for Trigger. As I believe they're going to be cutting to a break soon.
RSL Revival mug. Might want to wear a pin because who doesn't love pins? I know it's not the 90s anymore, but still pins are.
It's a gamble. Yeah, it's a gamble just because you're trying to rely on recalling to an expansion that SHIN maybe doesn't see, and then trying to catch the mutas, right? Like trying to catch them with your High Templar, with the Storm, trying to catch them with the Stalkers. Otherwise, SHIN can just avoid you, right, with the mutas, right? He can just avoid you, pivot around, and hit other bases.
For the premium ticket, I think that has backstage passes, maybe a meet and greet with some of the talent and the players. So,
but they're discussing the offline finals happening in December next month. So next month in December, there's going to be an offline finals in Korea.
Live casters all in the same venue, and also do not forget to check out the.
Otherwise, I believe we're going to be going for a break. I don't know what series is up next, but we'll soon find out. So we'll see you soon. See you soon after the break. See you soon.
Leave in the comments. We are sincerely appreciative of that because